A conversation with Joe Cook. Learn more right after this.
Hi, may I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
Okay.
Take that first step towards a better future. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg, how you doing?
Good, and yourself?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
Doing one of your shows.
Now, why do you say that?
Because I know you are you're probably an environmentalist. You may even qualify for environmentalist. So I know issues that's dealing with the environment, especially local and preservation, you're all over that. So.
Yes, but don't leave yourself out of that either, because I know you're interested.
But you're at a different level.
Yeah.
So.
I'm learning. It's just from my advanced age. That's
okay.
Yeah.
But I am interested in this show because in our previous tapings of the candidates running for city commission, a lot came up about the city park, and it's a lot I didn't know. So I'm interested to hear from Joe Cook about this.
Well, CRBI, Coosa River Basin Initiative, has been extremely involved in a number of issues locally and beyond, with a wide range of environmental issues. So it's really impressive to see that organization take such an active role, which I guess is why it was started, but it's really been very consistent and has a fairly huge following too, which Joe can tell us more about. But in addition to that one issue, I'm sure there's some other things going on. That's always plenty to keep busy with. So we'll be talking CRBI today with Joe Cook, and you need to stay with us, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
I'm transferring to the University of West Georgia.
Columbia University.
Kennesaw State.
UGA. Loyola University in Chicago.
Grambling State.
Shorter University. I'm going to Greensboro College, and we all got our start at Georgia Highlands.
No matter where your educational journey takes you, you can get your start at Georgia Highlands College. Georgia Highlands College. Enroll, engage, excel.
Welcome back to Community Watch, and we're very happy to have with us again Joe Cook. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me with you, John.
And you've been on the show several times now, and keeping us updated on things that are going on that we need to know about. How big is CRBI now?
We're about 3,500 members, and a lot of those members are in Rome and Floyd County, but we protect a 5,000 square mile river basin that stretches all the way from Tennessee over to Dahlonega, south to the suburbs of Metro Atlanta, over to Polk County and Cedartown, and then over to Center, Alabama. So it's a very large area, and our members come from all over the upper Coosa River Basin and beyond.
3,500 is pretty impressive.
It's, yeah, we have a large following. And
how old is CRBI now?
We're about 22 years old. It was founded here in Rome in 1992, 1993, and it was really a grassroots effort of citizens that saw problems all over the basin, you know, pulp mills and landfills and wastewater treatment plants weren't treating their wastewater, and they got together and they said, we've got to do something about this. And so it's one of the oldest watershed groups in the state.
And you have recently, fairly recently, changed your title within the organization.
That's right.
So you're now the Advocacy and Communications Coordinator.
That is correct,
Okay.
yeah. David Tucker, who used to be the principal at Model Middle School, he retired, I guess, last year and came to the helm as Executive Director of CRBI. So we've had David with us. Amos Tuck, who is our Riverkeeper and Program Coordinator, and he does a lot of advocacy and education work. And then Shira Kearse is our Membership and Events Coordinator, and she organizes all of our events.
Yeah. Before we get too deep into issues, we need to take a minute to thank CRBI for helping us with Foundation Camp every summer. It's been a huge part of our little project.
Stress day.
It's a stress day for
Stressful
me.
day, yeah.
It's a stress day for me, seeing all those kids in the water. But y'all handle it great. And
Well, I think there's nothing more that we like better than to get people out on the water and you know, kind of make that connection between people and water.
Yeah.
And these kids, a lot of those kids don't get a chance to experience that. So it's a lot of fun each summer.
Yeah. Well, we definitely need to talk about the Burwell Creek issue, which a lot of people, I know it's come up a good bit during the City Commission election, but there are a lot of people that weren't familiar with it or the issues involved. So, you know, we probably need to spend some time explaining all of that. And the term that's been used a lot, Rome Central Park,
Right.
what that means and where that came from. So
Right.
I'm not sure where you want to start with this, but where exactly are we talking about when we talk about that area, the Burwell Creek area?
I think the first thing we probably should make clear is there is a committee and a group of citizens that have organized as Save Rome Central Park, and they're doing some advocacy work on this election and calling on people to vote for certain candidates and not against other candidates. CRBI has nothing to do with that, and we are a 501c3 organization, and we can't endorse candidates or campaign against candidates. We can advocate on issues, and so we do that on Burwell Creek. And it's actually very exciting for us to see citizens learning about it and getting involved in it and really organizing. I don't think Rome's seen this kind of activism in a long time, and it's refreshing to see. But the area that we're talking about is along Riverside Parkway, basically from the corner of Turner McCall Boulevard and Riverside Parkway, where the old duck pond is, all the way north along Riverside Parkway, opposite Ridge Ferry Park, all the way to the railroad tracks. There's about 80 acres in there that is owned by the city. We refer to it as the Burwell Creek property. And it's between Jackson Hill, which is city-owned property that has a historic significance, and Ridge Ferry Park, which is the city's premier outdoor recreation park. So that property, back in 2001, the city commissioned a study. And that study looked at what we could do with Jackson Hill to develop Jackson Hill and its historic resources. But it also looked at that Burwell Creek property. And it suggested that trails should be built connecting Ridge Ferry Park with Jackson Hill. And in that study, they referenced, by doing that, you could create Rome's Central Park. And so we read that, and you know, I think that is a very legitimate idea for that property. You think about New York City with their Central Park. That's how their Central Park was created. They took a big swath of land many years ago when the city was growing and developing like Rome is now, and they set it aside. And if Rome did that, you could have a really incredible city park that stretched from our highlands, one of our historic hills, one of the 7 hills of Rome, all the way down to the Oostenaula River, the rivers which are the identity of Rome. Those rivers and hills are the identity of Rome. And wouldn't it be great if we had a central park that connected those two? So that's the property that we're talking about.
Well, tell us a little bit about what I know that property has been used for other things over the years, and it's come up in the discussion of that property
Right.
that there used to be I guess a landfill of some kind there.
Yeah, there sure was. There was an old city landfill there. It closed in the late 60s. Has not been used since about 1970, to the best of anybody's recollection. It covers about 10 to 30 acres of that property. And it's very interesting that when Ledbetter Properties first proposed this development, they came to us and they said, we've got this kind of unique idea for, doing this development here, and we want to know what y'all think about it, and we'd like to have your endorsement. So they came to us and showed us their plans and said, there's this landfill here, and we believe it's leaching stuff into the creek and polluting the river, and we think it needs to be fixed. We looked at those plans and we said, well, fixing a landfill probably a good idea, but it looks like you're also going to be filling in a lot of wetlands. You're going to be filling in a huge amount of floodplain. We want to wait and get more information before we endorse that plan. Unfortunately, that information was not made available to the greater Rome community until after Ledbetter Properties had already received their federal environmental permits to do the project. And that was because the way that the application they sent to the federal authorities, which is the Corps of Engineers, the permit was actually issued as what they call a nationwide permit. And that's the kind of permit that doesn't involve any public notice or any public comment period. So nobody in Rome got to see the original plans until they had already received their permit. We had to request the open records request to the Corps of Engineers. We got the data that had been collected on the landfill and the material in the landfill, and we looked at that, and we looked at 1,800 different tests that have been done on hazardous substances in the landfill, and it turns out that less than 2% of those 1,800 tests turned up contamination that would trigger a hazardous waste cleanup. And so after looking at that, we said, well, this landfill isn't a big problem. And then we did testing on Burwell Creek to see if there was any contamination getting in Burwell Creek, and we went and took sediment samples in the creek because that's where it would show up. We tested for mercury, lead, and arsenic. We tested, I think, 4 times at different locations there in Burwell Creek, and we found no contamination that would even come close to triggering a hazardous waste cleanup. So it was our conclusion that fixing the landfill shouldn't be a priority, and that the collateral damage of fixing the landfill and then filling in 50 acres of floodplain and filling in 4 acres of wetlands was not worth fixing that landfill. And as it turns out, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has looked at it and labeled it NFRAP, which means no further remediation planned. EPD does not include it on its hazardous site inventory list, and that's the list of sites that have to be cleaned up. So the conclusion of the federal regulators and the state regulators and CRBI is that landfill doesn't need necessarily to be cleaned up.
So, so help me understand. So what is the citizens are, you saying they're, they're organizing. So exactly what is it that this group of citizens are wanting with that property?
Well, that group, I think, and you'd have to ask them, but my understanding is they would like the city to preserve all of it as Rome Central Park. And that's CRBI's position is, yes, I think that's the best use of that property. And CRBI's position is, let's preserve it.
So, but you want to, so I guess the proposal, on the table, because from what I understand, this is going on since like 2001, I guess when it originally started.
Yeah, 2004, I think, is when Ledbetter Properties initially presented the plan to the city.
So is the current plan, is to do something other than preserve it as a park?
Yeah, the current plan is to turn it into a strip mall shopping center with some residential areas for apartments, restaurants, that sort of thing. So that mature forest, that floodplain forest that dates back about 40, 50 years, those wetlands would be replaced with a strip mall.
So kind of like, the river, I don't know, what is that called? Riverwalk, wherever the Riverbend Mall used to be. So is that what the proposal is kind of?
Yeah, a development similar to that. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm guessing CRBI position is that is hazardous for the area?
Well, our position is that those floodplains and those wetlands provide very important services for the community. Wetlands are, you can think of them as kind of the kidneys of our river system. And we have lots and lots of wetlands all over the place. And what happens is when we have rain, the water collects in those wetlands, and the water sits in there, and all the pollutants and sediments settle out, and what leaves those wetlands is cleaner water. So like if you went and got a bottle of water, stuck it in the river, and pulled out a bottle of water, that bottle of water would be brown. But if you let it sit on the table here for a couple of days, the sediment would fall out to the bottom, and what you would have would be clear water on top. And that's what wetlands do. They help filter out those pollutants and keep our rivers clean. And one of the reasons our rivers are not as clean as they used to be is because we've filled in a lot of wetlands and we've destroyed a lot of wetlands. And that's why they're protected and why there's regulations in place that help us preserve our wetlands. And then the other issue is the floodplain. If you fill in floodplain, the water has to go somewhere. And it's a matter not so much of an environmental issue, although it is, it's a property rights issue. If somebody else across the river fills in land and then your property floods instead of their property, you're not going to be too happy about that. So it's about the environment, but it's also about protecting people who own land and protecting their property.
Well, we've got to stop here for a break. We'll be back with much more, so don't go away.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Joe Cook of CRBI, Coosa River Basin Initiative, talking about the Burwell Creek property. So if that area, which is quite large, I mean 80 acres, were to be preserved for a park, there would be, or you're talking about the possibility of there being trails and so would that kind of use avoid the landfill, or is there any concern ever in the future about the landfill, or is that just kind of
I think from the city's perspective, the landfill is the key thing driving this. And we've heard it repeatedly from commissioners and from city staff. They were very concerned that at some point in the future, those federal and state environmental regulators are going to come to the city of Rome and say, you guys got to clean up this landfill. So when Ledbetter Properties came to them and said, hey, we're going to do this development and we're going to fix this landfill for you, they bit. And the idea was that Ledbetter Properties was going to fix this landfill for the city of Rome, and we no longer have to worry about it. Well, the reality is that the program in which they're doing this, even if Ledbetter Properties fixes the landfill, the city of Rome still remains liable for any releases from that landfill. So they might come in and do some remediation and put a fix on the landfill and clean it up, but in the future, if there's a release, the liability still lies with the city of Rome, not Ledbetter Properties. And so the question is, could you do a park-like development there? Well, you couldn't put in baseball fields and playgrounds. You wouldn't put them there because it's in the floodplain and they would flood. But what you could put there would be boardwalks through those wetlands, trails along the creek that connect Ridge Ferry Park and Jackson Hill. And the amount of wildlife that is in that area, that's what you'd want to preserve it for. You'd want to preserve it because you could walk through the Burwell Creek wetlands and see beaver and fox and raccoons and waterfowl and songbirds. All of those things are down in there. and it's a natural corridor between Jackson Hill and Ridge Ferry Park. So you would have limited uses on that property because of the landfill. You know, you couldn't put certain things there, but you also couldn't put certain things there because it's in the floodplain. So, you know, our contention is best to just leave it there, run some trails through there, and preserve it. So that's what we'd like to see done with it.
So now you said earlier, let me make sure. You're saying the city is concerned about the landfill potential problems, but you're saying based on state and I guess federal regulators, they don't see it as a problem.
It's not that they don't see it as a problem, but there is no trigger for them to come to the city of Rome and say, you guys got to clean this landfill up. It's the program that Ledbetter Properties is entering to do this is the Brownfield program, and it's a voluntary program. And so it's a good program. It's a way to get blighted areas that have contamination, to get them cleaned up and to redevelop them. Usually it's for industrial areas, commercial areas. Usually it's concrete and asphalt that they're dealing with remediating, not a mature floodplain forest. So it's a very unusual brownfield project, and if you call EPD's brownfield program, they'll tell you, yeah, this is an unusual project. It does qualify for the program, but it is highly unusual.
You know, you mentioned the fact that wetlands in our area have been removed to the detriment of our rivers over time. If wetlands are protected, why does that happen? I mean, what are the circumstances where the state or the federal government will say it's okay to take this one out?
Right. Well, when you do any work to fill wetlands, you have to go to the Corps of Engineers and get a federal permit to do that. And if you fill wetlands, the law requires that you mitigate elsewhere. So if you fill in wetlands in one spot, you've got to pay to restore wetlands elsewhere. And so in this case, Ledbetter Properties has actually, we've gone from impacting 4 acres of wetlands to impacting just about a ½ acre of wetlands. And they made those changes largely because of our continued advocacy, but also because the Corps of Engineers requires that when you do a development like this, you have to minimize impact to wetlands. And their original plan did not minimize impact to wetlands. It filled in all the wetlands. So recognizing our opposition, recognizing the Corps would probably not allow them to fill all 4 wetlands, they redesigned their project, and now the current plans, the last ones that were shown to the city, show them only impacting a ½ acre of wetlands. But for those ½ acres, they're going to have to pay to get other wetlands elsewhere fixed. So that's the way the law works, and it's administered by the Corps of Engineers.
So Joe, with this situation, is there a win-win for both parties in this?
Well, I mean, I think politics is the art of compromise. And as I see it, you've got a large contingency of the citizens of Rome that are saying preserve this as Rome Central Park. Don't do anything with it. Leave all of it there. On the other side, you have a well-known member of our business community saying, you know, this is going to be a great development and it's going to bring jobs, it's going to bring tax revenue. So you've got, you know, the city commission. If I'm on the city commission, I'd be working towards a compromise that could, you know, appease both parties. So I think that's what the City Commission should be working for, and there are ways to preserve natural recreation corridors in the property, and we've talked to Ledbetter Properties about this, saying, you know, if you shift the footprint of your project this way, we could have a natural recreational corridor here. We could also have a natural recreational corridor on the backside of the development. We could connect Jackson Hill and Ridge Ferry Park. So that's something that CRBI is working towards. But still, we want the City Commission to really think hard about preserving this property. And one of the things that we haven't brought up yet, and probably the biggest reason to preserve this property and not go through with this development, is that landfill cleanup. Ledbetter Properties requested from the city for them to designate this as a tax allocation district. And as a tax allocation district, the city will pay for portions of the development cost, including the landfill cleanup. It's our understanding that the landfill cleanup will be between $1 and $5 million. So the city taxpayers will actually, the city's going to issue a bond, and that bond will be used to pay for the landfill cleanup and other development costs. And then once the project is complete, Ledbetter Properties will, the property taxes they pay on that development will pay off that bond. The point is, if you built the project elsewhere, those property taxes that are generated from this development, which are significant, would immediately go into city coffers to be used for fire, police, and whatever the city wanted to. As a TAD development, it will be years before the city ever realizes any property tax revenue from this project. So what's happened is we're giving this property to them at a cut rate deal, $600,000 for 80 acres, which is $7,000 an acre, well below market value. And then the city is also paying for the landfill cleanup. And it's a landfill cleanup that we believe doesn't need to be done. So the city is spending money to clean up a landfill that doesn't need to be cleaned up. It's as if you were selling property to me and you said, you know, the roof on this house needs to be replaced, so I want you to give me a discount on this house. And so I give you the discount, and then you turn around and say, hey, I want you to pay for fixing the roof. So that is kind of what's going on here. It's our kind of version of small town corporate welfare.
Well, we know that CRBI is into much more than this single project, even though it's gotten a lot of publicity. And we don't have a lot of time left. We know that you've got a fundraiser coming up, the annual Fish Fry, which is a huge event.
Right.
Even though I have yet to win the kayak. I have a drawing for a kayak. It's nice. It's nice.
I'd be interested.
Yeah. So we want to give information about that.
November 14th from 11 to 3 at Rome First United Methodist Church is our annual fish fry and catfish kissing contest. We'll probably serve 900 to 1,000 plates of catfish, and we've got 12 contestants that are raising money for us. The top 3 contestants in the catfish kissing contest get to kiss the catfish. The person that raises the least amount of money, the bottom feeder as we call it, also has to kiss the catfish. So we have a lot of fun with that, and it's going to be a great event on November 14th.
We're going to give those particulars again when we come back. We've got to take another break here. So stay with us. We'll be right back with those details after this.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been talking with Joe Cook from CRBI, and they have their annual fish fry coming up on November 14th. And if you want to get more information about that, go to their website at CUSA.org. You can buy tickets and also donate to individuals who are competing to kiss the fish. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for informing us of everything. We'll have you back and talk about some other stuff sometime soon. And thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time on Community Watch.